democracy. We would like to make clear that we don't support or oppose any candidate, and we only take positions on issues. It is now my pleasure to introduce our moderator this afternoon, Annette Tucker Sutherland. She's an attorney and former journalist, and she also spent years leading the Shaker Heights chapter of the League of Women Voters of Greater Cleveland.
Thank you and welcome. In order to create a brave space for sharing and community, we do have some guidelines that we ask everyone to observe. This is a space for learning, not debating. This is not a space for finger pointing or using any inflammatory language. We ask that you call people out, in, not out, call people in, and speak from your own experience, avoiding generalizations. And we do not tolerate racist, sexist, homophobic, or other hateful speech. After presentations from our panelists, we will have some dialogue up here, the three of us, and then the panelists will be taking questions from the audience. If you have a question, we ask that you write it on a card, and we have a couple of volunteers who will raise their hand or stand up right now, Kathy and Lynn, with cards. So if you want a card, raise your hand, they will find you, and they will come back to collect the cards and bring them up here. Now I'd like to introduce our panelists. Barbara Palmer, PhD, is Executive Director and creator of the Baldwin Wallace University's Center for Women and Politics of Ohio. The center's mission invites the public to learn more about the history of women representing Ohio and to provide undergraduates with the opportunity to engage in original research. Professor Palmer teaches courses on American politics, civil rights and liberties, constitutional law, and women and politics. She has received awards from the Southern Political Science Association and the BW Student Government. Her book, 100 Years and Then Some, of Women Running for Office in Ohio, explores the history of the remarkable and diverse trailblazing women. Her expertise has been featured in a wide variety of local, national, and international media. Fizz White is Deputy Director of Mission Programs and Communications for the Matriots, a nonpartisan, values-driven organization to assist women seeking elected office in Ohio. The Matriots works to create more awareness and build accessibility for women to understand the levers and processes of the local and statewide political landscape to drive participation. They also work to get more women elected to office in Ohio by leading the Matriots endorsements. They grew up in Cincinnati and graduated from Xavier University with a degree in philosophy, politics, and the public, and a minor in gender and diversity studies. They have worked as a legislative aide to Representative Cedric Denson of Cincinnati. To get us started, the League has indicated that about 50% of Ohio's registered voters are women. One of our nation's founders wrote in 1776, "A governing body, in theory, should reflect its constituency, a representative assembly. Should be an exact portrait in miniature of the people at large." We know John Adams neglected his wife Abigail's urging to remember the ladies. Women finally gained the right to vote in 1920. Our thematic question today is, how close or far are we from having that proportion of elected leaders being women in Ohio? Dr. Palmer.
So I'm really happy to be here, and I'm going to try to give us sort of a big picture look at what's happening in Ohio in terms of the political representation of women. But it is Women's History Month, so I wanted to start with a little quiz. I'm a professor, so that's what I have to do. I'm curious, does anybody know what year the first woman ran for president? I will give you a little hint. You're going to be surprised. So how many of you think that it's A? Okay. B? C? All right. D? Do I have any more? and then E. Well, those of you, this is a good crowd, I can tell. You guys know your stuff. So it's actually A. So there have been women running for president for over 150 years. And most of the time they run under third-party labels, so we don't really hear about them, and they're not part of the two-party process, and so they don't get a lot of media coverage. But there have been many, 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 many women who have actually run for president throughout history, but we just don't know about them. But one of my favorites is Victoria Claflin Woodhull. Whenever I get asked, oh, what historical figure would you like to have dinner with? I always say her. She was described by one author as if Hillary Clinton and Madonna had a love child, it would be her. I think it's a really great description of her. And so she was born in 1838 in Homer, Ohio. And so that's why I love beginning my talks about her, because we can call her our own. Her father was described as a gambler, horse thief, and counterfeiter. And she was one of 14 kids. She was one of the older ones, and she shared a house with all those kids and 9 of her cousins. And because she was one of the oldest, she dropped out of school really early because she was responsible for taking care of the kids, because the adults were just absent. Her father was off doing nefarious things, but was also a raging alcoholic and was a terrible parent. Same with her mother, also incredibly emotionally abusive. And so when she and her sister, those traveling shows where you would hitch up a horse and have a cart and they'd, go from town to town selling snake oil or whatever. Well, this was back in the day when the spiritualist movement was very popular in the United States, and people legitimately thought that they could communicate with the dead. Well, Victoria and her sister, Tennessee, would have seizures, and we don't really know what caused them, but they claimed that they were communing with the dead when they were children. So Dad was like, oh, I can make some money off of this, and would bring their daughter, these 2 kids, from town to town, selling their services to communicate with the dead, for paying customers. And so at the age of 15, she got married just to escape her family. But as you can imagine, not a happy marriage. And within 5 years, she had to file for divorce, which was, as you can imagine, back in the day, was scandalous. And she had to actually appeal to the New York State legislature to be granted a divorce. But that didn't stop her. She eventually moved to New York, where she became very good friends with Cornelius Vanderbilt. He actually hired her to be his clairvoyant, and the rumor is she gave him stock tips that were really good. But he helped set her up. She was the first female stockbroker in New York City, and she opened her own newspaper, Woodhull and Claflin's Weekly. And so her notoriety was building and growing. She knew Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Susan B. Anthony. She was sort of the younger, more glamorous generation. And Woodhull was the first woman to testify before a congressional committee. And she was testifying, I can't remember if it was the drafting of the 14th or 15th Amendment, I can't remember which one, but she testified before a congressional committee to argue that women should be included in the amendment, in addition to blacks. So in 1872, she runs for president and is taking on Ulysses S. Grant. But on election day, she was in jail. So there was 2 problems with her candidacy. The first one was she wasn't old enough to run. She was only 34, and you have to be 35 to run for president, but she didn't care. But the other problem was she was in jail on election day. She had published some scandalous information, all true, in her newspaper. Henry Ward Beecher was he was sort of the Joel Osteen of his day. He had a megachurch in New York and was incredibly famous, particularly in the New York City area. He was, a very powerful person, and he was having an affair with his best friend's wife, and she got pregnant. And he paid for her abortion in the 8th month. Meanwhile, he's preaching family values every Sunday. And Victoria was outraged by this, and the way that the woman was treated compared to the way he was treated absolutely outraged her. And there's this apocryphal saying attributed to her. I don't know if she actually said it or not, but I think it's hilarious, but it gives you some insight into her thinking. She's like, well, marriage is horrible for women. If you're a prostitute, at least you get paid. So that was her thinking. And obviously she had a horrible experience with marriage, but she understood how when women got married, they lost all of their rights. And so that was an issue that she really cared about. And she was alluded to as Madam Satan in that cartoon up there for her views on women's rights and marriage. But at any rate, she published this story in her newspaper, and back in the day, to distribute your newspaper, you had to send it through the mail. And New York had an obscure law that said you could not distribute obscene material through the mail. The powers that be determined this was obscene, so they rounded her up, threw her in jail. So for those of you who are American history buffs, if you're familiar with the Comstock Acts, this New York law was the model for that legislation. And so the guy who proposed it in New York and got it passed went to DC and decided he wanted to do this for the nation. So at any rate, we know her name was not on any ballot anywhere, but she's just one of those names that you have to know. And I wish there would be like a documentary or something about her, or a movie, because I just think it would be a fantastic story. There's like so many cool things about her. And I think I have this biography up here, Other Powers, I highly recommend. A friend of mine gave it to me for my birthday, and it's 700 pages, paperback, and I went, and I just chucked it, you know, on the shelf, ignored it. And then one summer I picked it up. I read it in 3 days. Okay, I could not put it down. She's so fascinating. So there's a biography that I can recommend for you. All right, so as it turns out, a century ago, Ohio was on the forefront of women's activism, women's participation in the suffrage movement, women's participation in the temperance movement, women running for public office. So the state has a proud history and has numerous famous firsts. And so we started, you know, when we look 100 years ago, there are all kinds of really incredible and amazing and inspirational things going on. And so when we fast forward to today, not so much. And so I wanted to share this with you today. This is research that I did with one of my undergraduates, also supported by grants from the Matriots. And so we wanted to just provide a snapshot of where we're at today from the local county level up here in Ohio. So for county commissions, Ohio has 88 counties. 86 of those counties have 3-person county commissions, and they serve 4-year terms. With 2 people up for election in presidential years and 1 up in the midterm years. And the exceptions are Cuyahoga and Summit counties, where they have county councils of 11 members with staggered 4-year terms as well. So in 2024, approximately 2/3 of all county commission seats were up for election. Women won only 15.1% of those seats. Okay, so out of those 185 seats, only 15% were won by women. If we move up a level, in the Ohio State House of Representatives, Ohio's House has 99 members who serve for 2-year terms, term limited to 8 years total. In 2024, women won 35 of the 99 seats, so about a third. This is slightly higher than the national average, but it's about on par with the national average. So if we look across the country, we're in our lower chamber in the state legislature, we look like the rest of the country. Among the 35 women who were State House winners were 7 women of color. Based on my limited research on this, the women in the State House tend to be much more diverse than the men. So if we move up another level to the Ohio State Senate, Ohio's 33 state senators serve staggered 4-year terms, limited to 2 terms, and 16 senators were up for election in presidential years, and then it's 17 2 years later. So in 2024, 10 of the 31 candidates were women, which is about a third, and 5 were Democrats and 5 were Republicans. So for the first time in a while, we saw parity between the parties, and that's something we can talk about as well. 4 women won, 2 incumbents and 2 new women. So women won a quarter of the seats that were up for grabs. So when the new session started in January, these 4 women joined 5 others for a total of 9, which is a record. Okay, we've been stuck at 7 and 8 for about 16 years, and we finally pushed it up to 9. So yeah, in the state Senate, the numbers are so small, so it's very difficult to see patterns over time in the increases. If we move up to the federal level, in the U.S. House, 8 of the 30 candidates for Ohio's 15 U.S. House seats were women. All of these women were Democrats, so we're seeing a really lopsidedness in terms of party representation here, and we can talk about why I think that's happening. 4 of these women won, and so women will be about 27% of Ohio's House delegation, which is actually slightly lower than the national average. So what's interesting is that these 4 women who won in 2024 were the same women who won in 2023, and 3 of these 4 women are Black. So they are, again, substantially more diverse than their white male counterparts. And 3 of these women have been in for a really, really, really long time. So it's the same female Democratic incumbents who keep getting reelected over and over and over. We had a little bit of change with Amelia Sykes winning in 2022, but beyond that, it's been the same 3 women. Marcy Kaptur is now the dean of the women in the House. She is the longest-serving woman in the history of the U.S. House. So there's some interesting dynamics going on there with gerrymandering. If we go up to the U.S. Senate, as I'm sure you're aware, Ohio's never sent a woman to the U.S. Senate. There have been very few women who have even run for U.S. Senate. If I'm remembering correctly, I think there were 2 in the 90s. In 2025, there are 25 women in the U.S. Senate. So that's where we're at. And as a political scientist, the way we like to think about these things is we generally assume that we're going to see a pyramid shape, with the idea that most people, including women, tend to run for lower level office first. And then that's your farm team. That's where you recruit women to run for higher levels of office. And so when I first started doing this research with my students, I expected to see that pyramid shape with way more women serving at the county and local level. And we don't see that. Like, I've spent a lot of time staring at this, and I don't know what that is. And then when you actually dig down and look at the career paths of how women got to the U.S. House or even the state Senate, they are far more likely to have more political experience than their male counterparts. So it's not even really, we call it, it's not really a pyramid. It's almost like it's like a silo. So that pool, that farm team is really small, but it's incredibly important for women. And we can talk more about what we do with that information and how we go about recruiting candidates. And so at this point, I would love to turn it over to Fizz.
Hello, hello. Good afternoon, everyone. Okay, I didn't even have to ask twice. Okay, usually I have to say it again usually, so that's good. Y'all are in it. Thank you so much for coming out today. My name is Fizz White, and I am the Deputy Director of Mission Programs and Communications for an organization called the Matriots. Have the honor of getting to tell you a little bit more about us today, so thank you so much. The Matriots envision a world where women have equality, influence, and power, and we exist to advance women's equal participation in all aspects of Ohio life, of political life in Ohio. So the Matriots were founded in 2017 when a group of Columbus women went to the Women's March in DC. They came back, galvanized and inspired, and decided, we've got to do something about this. And so they did some research and knew that supporting and giving money to women candidates could have a great impact. And they were definitely right about that. We did more research through folks like Dr. Palmer and realized there just simply aren't enough women running for office in the first place, and also recognized how vital it is that we advocate to change legislation and policies and uplift those who are fighting to do the same thing. So at the Matriots, we deeply believe in values over labels. We are a nonpartisan organization, and we know that the things that we are fighting for really have nothing to do with party, but everything to do with people and the well-being of our communities. So at the Matriots, we believe in and fight for equality, equity, health, safety, and independence for all women. We fight for dominion over our bodies and access to affordable healthcare services, healthy, safe, and secure communities for us and our families, economic independence, including access to education and workplaces that are safe from harassment. And we also fight for political empowerment of women, resulting in gender parity. These are the things that drive our organization and the values that lead us every single day. And these are the values that lead our mission. At the Matriots, we have a mission to endorse, encourage, and to advocate. So we endorse candidates who align with our values. We invest financially. We help to promote their platforms and drive support towards their campaigns. Through our education programs and events, we help to demystify the political arena, its systems, its processes, the roles, and help women to leverage their political power and find their voice. We strengthen political voices of women through legislation and policies, and like I said, in uplifting those who are fighting for those things as well. So to date, the Matriots have endorsed over 450 candidates. I see one of them sitting right here in the front here, so I have to get a shout out to Megan here. Yes, yeah, exactly, yes, yes, thank you, yes. Someone who's stepping up and running for their communities, absolutely. So we've endorsed over 450 women across Ohio on the state, local, and county level, and invested over $1 million into their campaign since our first endorsement class in 2018. Thousands of Ohioans have joined the Matriots movement and engaged with us in understanding the political landscape in Ohio, helping women to run, and fighting for things like reproductive rights and against issues like gerrymandering here in Ohio. I lost my notes a bit. So we know that investing in candidates, fighting for these women-friendly policies, and encouraging more women to participate in the political process can have incredible impact, and we've seen that over and over again with our incredible candidates. So our Matrix candidates actually have in an even election year, have about a 40% win rate for office, which as Dr. that is higher than that national average that Dr. Palmer was talking about. So we know that our endorsement and our support around our candidates can have incredible impact. In 2023, the last local election year, the last odd year, we had a 75% win rate with our candidates. And we also understand that when you invest in women, when they run, they do win. So in 2023, we saw an incredible amount of organizations and folks that were contradictory to our beliefs, particularly around school board races and what's happening with public education. And we knew that we had to double down and really invest in those women who were running for office, especially on those school board races. So we invested more than we ever have in school board races and had an 85% win rate among those candidates in 2023, really wrapping our arms around those candidates and supporting them. So we know that when we invest and we know when women run that they do win and they do have impact. At the Matriots, we have the honor of watching the incredible political journeys of some of our candidates. There are candidates that we've endorsed 2, 3, 4 times and continue to come back to us for support, continue to run for office. Sometimes they're running for office because they just haven't won yet. It is no easy journey running for, right? It's no easy journey. Anybody else who's been involved in campaigns understands that. And so they might be running 2, 3, 4 times for office. And so they're coming back to us for the support and they're not giving up. They're dedicated for running. We have had candidates that follow the impact and go to where they believe they'll be most impactful. We've had candidates, kind of going back to that not pyramid thing, but we've had candidates that, have run for, who have been elected to the State House and say, I'm gonna go have impact on the county level and are now a county auditor, or who were in the State House and now are running for city council or city attorney. And so we have seen that multiple times with so many of our candidates, and so they follow that impact and less of that sort of political trajectory that we thought we would see. They're really going to where they feel like they can have a positive impact on their communities. We've endorsed so many women across the state who are fighting for issues, who are being targeted online by hate speech, by folks who do not want to see them thriving and fighting for the values that we believe in, and they continue to stay in it. They fight. We had a candidate last year who ran for office and was running in was a Democrat running in the most red district in Ohio, and didn't go in there with an attitude of I'm trying to flip the state blue or turn whatever and this and that, but really said, I connect with these people in my community. I'm a coal miner's daughter, and I might be a trans woman running in a red district, but I'm gonna fight, and I don't care if my opponent is participating in hate groups against me. I'm gonna fight. And though she did not win her race, she was appointed to office after the cycle, and now is sitting on a city council in her community. So it just goes to show that fight, and that even when folks aren't winning, even when although the odds are stacked against them, our candidates and our women are really fighting for their communities and really pushing to have impact. We have been able to endorse some incredible trailblazing women, and I have to shout out Monica Wilson, who is one of our incredible endorsed candidates from right here in Parma. She is the first Black person to serve on Parma City Council, and we have had the honor to endorse her. Yes, thank you. Thank you. Yes, exactly. We've had the honor to endorse Monica. If you ever have a chance to meet her, she is an incredible woman and a wonderful friend and partner of the Matriots, and we're very grateful for her. So at the Matriots, I hope to shape and oversee our programmatic and communications initiatives in alignment with the mission and vision of the Matriots. I get to play a key role in moving forward strategy and implementing impactful Matriots events and programs and campaigns that help build awareness and accessibility to folks to try and better understand the local and statewide political landscape and drive civic engagement as well. Throughout our endorsement work, I get to bear witness to many of the incredible stories that I just told you, and so many more, and to really help wrap our arms around the incredible candidates that come for our endorsement that are truly spectacular women and truly spectacular leaders. I am so grateful to be here today to get to be a shepherd of some of those stories and a vessel for some of the incredible work that they're doing, and grateful to have an incredible conversation with all of you. So thank you so much.
Thank you both. We're going to move to a bit of a dialogue up here at the table. I'd like to open with asking my panelists here, why do we need women among our elected officials?
Yeah. Nice timing.
I know, right?
So, yeah, I get asked that question a lot. You know, what difference does it make? And there's a couple ways of looking at this. First, it's just fairness, right? I mean, you know, and I always say never underestimate the 9-year-old girl effect. If you can't see it, you don't think that you can do it. And so, you know, especially back when Hillary Clinton was running, even when Sarah Palin was running, you know, the number of people that I talked to who said, oh yeah, I brought my daughter, you know, she's only 6, but I want her to see this. And so it's inspiring, because if you can see it, then you can see yourself doing that. And plus, it's just fair, right? It's just fair. We're 50% of the population, come on. But beyond that, we know that, so the research that I've done says, well, okay, let's look at the voting records of men and women in Congress, for example, or even in the state legislature, and they're no different, okay? Voting records are exactly the same. Party and district or state trumps everything, okay? And so people look at that and say, well, see, it doesn't matter. And I'm like, no, that's only a piece of what legislators do. Anybody who is on the outside looking in, who has a different experience than the majority, is gonna bring a different set of priorities. We know that women care a lot more about traditional women's issues. They are going to bring a different set of priorities with them when they come to the table. And it's not that the men are against them, it's just that they never thought about them or necessarily made it a priority. And so I love to tell the story about in 1993, the very first bill that Bill Clinton signed was the Family and Medical Leave Act. That legislation had been bouncing around Capitol Hill for over 20 years. And it took a big jump in the number of women in Congress. In 1992, that was the first year of the woman, where we saw a significant increase in the number of women in the House and the Senate. We like to brag that the number of women in the Senate tripled. Yeah, it went from 2 to 6. But we had a significant, the number of women in the House doubled, which was a huge increase. And so women were now this critical mass and could say, this is our priority, we want to get this done. And it was the first piece of legislation that Congress passed in 1993. So, I mean, it's a historical example, but there are lots and lots of more contemporary examples of this. And so women bring a completely different set of priorities, they bring a different perspective, they tend to see issues in different ways, and it's important to have those voices at the table. Fizz, you want to add anything?
Yeah, 100%. I think I want to agree with everything that Dr. Palmer said, and I think that there are some incredible examples of that work being done. I think about Hamilton County, who in their county government, they have their 3 county commissioners are women, sheriff is a woman, the county auditor, county prosecutor, and you can see that, you can see the work that takes place because of that. There is Sheriff McGuffey in Hamilton County has made huge priority around mental health and domestic violence in the jails there, and the commissioner's office have, you can see the support that comes from the commissioner's office, and so you can see the examples of when women are at the table, the different things that are not just prioritized, but then actually carried out in terms of policy, actually have dollars put behind them, folks that are thinking strategically about those things, and also things pop up like the Hamilton County Commission on Women and Girls that they have there that I don't believe anyone else across the state has, but they literally have a commission of women and girls who sit on their commission and bring policy initiatives and ideas to the commissioners, present every year, and these are ideas that the commissioners are actually carrying forward, putting into policy and implementing, and so there are so many ways to have impact and have a voice, and especially when those issues are actually being prioritized.
Yeah, thank you. I'm also reminded of the fact that it took a woman senator, Kamala Harris, to question a Supreme Court nominee. Are you aware of any laws that give the government the power to make decisions about the male body?
Yes.
Okay, another question for our panelists. What do you think motivates women to get out there and run for an office?
I will just say from, in our endorsement interviews and when we're interviewing our candidates, one of the first questions we ask them is why? Why are you running for office? And they all have a deep, deep why to why they're running. I remember being in school and I would ask someone, what do you want to do? Like, what's your, and I was like, I want to be a congressperson. I said, what do you want to do? Like, what impact, like, what are you actually trying to do with your degree? Like, what impact do you actually want to have? And I've never had one of our candidates answer it that. They always answer the question with, here's the issue I saw, here's what got me into the game, and here's why I want to do it. And so I think that there are issues, deep issues that motivate our women to run and encourage them to run. But I think it's also the asking over and over and over and telling someone you are the right person for this job. My mom ran for local office when me and my sister's up there. Hi, Joss. When we were in junior high and high school, and I don't even know how many times she had to be asked to run for office before she did it, before she had to be told, you're going to every PTA meeting, you might want to run for school board. And so I think that just being asked and told, here's how you can do it, you're the right person for this job, you need to do it, but then also saying, I'm going to do a meal train for you. When you run for office, I'm gonna pick up the kids. I'm gonna get you guys to this and there. So it's not just it's the encouragement piece that I think really gets people starts to get women thinking about running to office, asking them, telling them the right person for the job. But then it's the carrying out of. There's so many responsibilities that women have to take care of, or are usually in control of, from healthcare decisions to the dollars, the budget, childcare. So you can't just say, get up and run. You have to say, I'm gonna wrap my arms around and do this for you when we're encouraging women to run. So I think that is really that next piece that I often see really keeps women in the game, especially as well as saying, yeah, I have support, and that's where I think the Matriots is so key, is that we often are that hive, that landing place for women when they just need that support to keep on going, to keep on running, and to be encouraged to stay in the game.
Yeah, no, I'll just expand on that, and if we want to talk more about candidate recruitment, we can definitely do that. But to back this up, I mean, there is 3 decades of research that shows when you ask women why they ran, they're motivated by issues and making their communities a better place. And I'm speaking in generalities here, but men just seem to wake up and think, I'm going to run for president. And they do.
And they do.
Women don't do that. And women have to be asked repeatedly and told repeatedly you should run before it finally sinks in and they finally do. I have I'm good friends with the woman who represented the state Senate district that I grew up in, or excuse me, the state House district that I grew up in Minnesota, in the Minneapolis area, and she got tired of being one of a handful of women in the Minnesota State House, and the party caucus met and decided who was going to do their candidate recruitment, and nobody really likes to do candidate recruitment, but she's like, I'll do it, and I'm going to recruit a woman to run for every open seat in the state. And the men were like, whatever, go ahead, go do that. And she did. In one election cycle, she tripled the number of women, and she did it again the following election cycle, and Minnesota went from being 40th in the nation to the top 10 in 2 election cycles, because somebody made it a priority. But she talked about the fact that how hard it was to recruit women to run. You know, she would work with county officials in every part of the state and chambers of commerce and talk about, okay, who are the women in your area, in your town, in your city, who are the movers and shakers, who would be a good candidate, and she would get a list of names, and she would call them, and they're like, oh, no, I can't, I've got kids, or oh, no, I can't, I'm too busy, or oh, no, I can't fundraise. You know, they had a million excuses, and so she figured out, on average, she had to ask the same woman 5 times before they would finally say yes. And by then, there were 3 men who already had their name on the primary ballot. Mm-hmm. And so, this is something that, is a problem, and I think building that support network, it's not just saying go run, it's making sure that people have the support network that they need to be able to actually do it.
Could you please comment on how voters react to the gender of a candidate?
Yeah, so there's good news and more good news, and then some news. When women are running for legislative offices, particularly, and school boards, city councils, county councils, even U.S. Congress, voters don't care. They're kind of over it. The one exception is president and governor. I guess that's 2. But especially for president, that is still a very gendered image of power for a whole host of reasons. And so studies still show this, where, when women are running for legislature, it doesn't really matter anymore on average. But when women are running for president or tend to be running for executive level offices, that's where it does play a role.
Yeah, no, those executive levels are certainly where I think you see that, and also where folks do tend to care, and also where you certainly see more of the language around, why aren't they capable? Or, I think we heard some different rhetoric when Nan Whaley ran for governor, and so I definitely think there is that bias there, and I think that even in the places where, it might not necessarily matter, like, to a voter, I think a lot of women are fearful that it will matter, fearful especially in this digital age, right? That, fearful for the cybersecurity of their families, fearful that they will be, might be attacked online and all those different things. And so I think that fear that gender bias will have an impact on you running for office, regardless if there's evidence that voters actually care or not. I think there's something that women are thinking about when they're thinking about running for office, and I think maybe something that keeps them from stepping up when, especially again, usually deeply thinking about the well-being of their family and how their family is going to continue to function. I know that was certainly something, even in this was before we were deep into the pits of Instagram and all these things, that my mother thought deeply about how it would affect our family before she ran. It's usually a sit-down conversation with the family, right? When women run for office, right? When a man is running for office, I'm running for office, but it is a sit-down conversation. Hey, this is how things are going to change. This is how things are going to shift when a woman typically runs for office. So it's a very different, even without that bias, but the logistics just of how your gender plays into you running for office, I think are very, very real for many candidates.
Yeah, thank you. You did mention the hate speech that one of the candidates Matriots supported experienced. I found dichotomy in the research that I did. I found that more important than gender stereotypes are incumbency, party label, and political issues. And then I found that there had been a lot of research on media coverage being very gender biased.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and I mean, for those of you who are members of the league, you know that our redistricting system here in Ohio is broken.
Yes.
I mean, and so incumbency
Very deeply.
is, especially when you're running for Congress, U.S. House, is the biggest barrier. And most incumbents are men, and that's true still nationwide, with a few exceptions. And so, yeah, absolutely. What's fascinating is these, institutional barriers that would seem to be gender neutral on their face. When you actually look at their impact in the real world, they're not. Incumbency in particular. So before I started studying Ohio politics, I spent about 20 years studying women running for Congress, and my co-author and I looked at the number of women, starting with, so does anybody know who the very first woman to run for Congress was? It's someone you know. Elizabeth Cady Stanton. And I can never remember the date. It was post-Civil War. I want to say 1868. She ran for U.S. House. We don't know a ton about her campaign, but she did it because she wanted to improve the insanity of how she could run for Congress, but she couldn't vote for herself. She got 24 votes. She was on the ballot. She got 24 votes, and she joked it was all of her sons and uncles and nephews. Right about the time, around 1920, is when we begin to see women running for U.S. House. In drips, and it's not, that's when they really start running. And when Jeanette Rankin, the first woman to be elected to the U.S. House. And so in 22? Yeah, 1922. Well, that doesn't sound right in my head. 1918. And it was before the 19th Amendment. And so right around the time women, it's post-19th Amendment, suffrage, that's when we begin to see women really running for Congress. By the 1920s, 1930s, and there's jokes that the reason why this happened is because they installed air conditioning in the Capitol. That's when running for Congress becomes a lifetime job. Prior to the 1930s, the tradition was you served 1 or 2 terms, like Abe Lincoln, and then you stepped down. That was the norm. It was not seen as something you did for a long time. Plus, getting to D.C. was really hard. D.C. was, it was awful. You didn't want to be there, and you certainly didn't want to bring your family. And so that all starts to change in the 20s and 30s. Suddenly, D.C. becomes a much nicer place. The Capitol's air-conditioned. And all of a sudden, right when women are starting to run, the incumbency effect kicks in. And so it's one of those interesting historical things where you see those 2 data lines cross and you think, oh my gosh, wow. So things that seem to be gender neutral on their face are not always gender neutral.
Yeah.
Just a couple more questions before we move to the audience. Is there any way to assess officials' effectiveness while in office and compare men and women that way?
I mean, I think that certainly that for the Matriots, oh my goodness, y'all are in it. Wow, okay. But certainly honestly, I just got so overwhelmed with that. Okay, that's awesome. I kind of forget the question, honestly. Sorry.
Assessing the difference in effectiveness.
Yeah, okay. Man, seriously, like that is incredible. But so when the Matriots are doing our candidate research and looking at our endorsement process, especially for those who have already served in office, we're certainly looking at their voting records. What are the policies that they're voting on? Are they aligning with our values? And I certainly think that that's certainly a way to measure effectiveness. Are the candidates that you're electing actually carrying through on the values and the policies that they said they're going to do, of course. But I really think that particularly for the local level, that accessibility, I think, is a really incredible way to think about effectiveness. If your constituents cannot get to you, can't get information from you, don't understand your office, don't understand what your office does and how to ask questions. I think that is a way that I tend to try to think about the effectiveness of our candidates, when they're in office and what are they doing, because I think on the local level it is so critical that education piece of being able to actually get in touch, be accessible to your constituents is a key piece of allowing folks to actually play a role in the political process. I think it's a key access point for folks to get involved in the political process, and often we are not participating on the local level, and so I think that's something that when our candidates often are very concerned about that relationship between their constituents and their office, and I think that's a really key piece of being an effective public servant, and something that I certainly think about. I'm sure Dr. Palmer has a much more data-driven answer than that. So
there is data. There are people that look at constituent letters responded to, number of votes taken, all of the bills proposed, all those kinds of things. But that's beyond what I look at. I just try to get them in there. Once they're in there, I'm like, go do your thing. But I'm going to ask. I think we can infer. Research on women in Congress. So incumbents win 95% of the time. So, and to me, that's one measure of, okay, are you doing your job? Because if you're not, either you're probably not going to run again, or people will vote you out. So incumbents in general win 95% of the time. If you disaggregate that by gender, male incumbents win 94% of the time. Women incumbents win 97% of the time. It's a small gap, but it is statistically significant, and it is consistent over the past 30 years. To me, that is an indirect indicator that women are hustling. They know the importance of constituent service.
Yes.
They're less likely to take for granted that they're going to get reelected. So again, it's indirect, but to me, it's very interesting and suggestive.
And I see that deeply with the conversation in the candidates that we endorse. That sentiment is across the board, I think, exists. That's really interesting. I love that. I'm learning up here. This is fun.
Thank you. I want to take a minute to recognize people in the audience who have served in elected office. If you have, could you raise your hand? I know we have someone up here front. Okay. Just the one? Okay, thank you. Thank you for your service. And we do have a microphone available for roving. If you feel that you can contribute to the conversation and the question and answers that we're about to engage in, you are welcome to do that. So we do have lots of questions from the audience. Let's start with this one. Dr. Palmer, you discussed a dynamic of women tending to run for local office before statewide or national office. I've heard that in many cases, the workload associated with serving in these local positions is very high and can discourage them from running for higher office. Can you comment on whether you've seen this happen, offer any recommendations for women considering running for office?
I can't comment on that directly, but what we're starting to figure out is that the pipeline doesn't necessarily explain this idea of running for lower office and then using that as a springboard doesn't necessarily work for women, because women see serving at the local level in a very different way than they do see serving in the State House or in the U.S. Congress. And that they're running at the local level for very different reasons than they would be motivated to run at the state. So when they're running for local level, it's because they want to deal with a specific issue, and that issue is best dealt with at the local level. And I've actually heard sometimes that it's the opposite. Yes, local level office is grueling, but it's a lot easier than running for State House or Congress just to run. Sometimes you're running in a nonpartisan race, which can be more attractive to women candidates. You don't have to travel, right? I mean, that's a huge thing. I live in Senator Nikki Antonio's district, and the idea that she's driving back and forth to Columbus just blows my mind. I can't imagine having to do that. Or, even living in Toledo and having to do that drive back. I mean, that's a tremendous amount of time. Where if you run at the local level, you don't have that additional burden. And so, so like I said, I can't answer that directly, but I think there's pros and cons to each. But there does seem to be, I don't want to call it a disconnect, but this idea that women are seeing politics as a career in the first place, and they're seeing local level office as a launching pad, might not be the case at all.
Yeah.
All right, this is kind of a related question. It says, local races can be somewhat bootstrapped. As the office covers a wider area, funding and organization become more complicated. How do women break through that barrier? Either of you.
Yeah.
Maybe we should focus on how Matriots would help support
Yeah.
that.
Local elections are, absolutely, they're tough. They're lower budget. There's not a lot of dollars in a local election race. They are definitely very grassroots, and so a big thing is how do you get getting your message, your platform out to more folks? Mailers, social media campaigns, all those things are very expensive. I mean, these things are really expensive to be able to get your message out to constituents. And so, one of the things that the Matrix is focused on is helping to boost the platforms of our candidates. Once we do endorse our candidates, we are posting on our social media on their platform, their names. We have a website for them on our a webpage for them on our website that has a bio of them and directs you to their candidate web page. We have a website with all of their volunteer information and opportunities so that you can find a candidate in your county, in your area, and go volunteer for a Matriots endorsed candidate. And then it's the other things of just the grind that really does exist during an election. And so it's even the things like that, we call them Be Strong emails, but about a month out from the election, we'll just send a motivational email to our candidates every morning, just saying, we got you, we're here. And sometimes it's a quote from someone, sometimes it's a quote from a student that we had that was, that wanted to say thank you, a board member that wanted to, express how amazing they feel our candidates are. And so it's also just those things that I think help get women through that race. And it's really tough. But even, things like fundraising are really, really tough. We know women tend to fundraise in, smaller amounts. You might get a $50 here, $100 there, $25 there, where, a man running for office is more likely to have, a bigger, maybe they have $5,000 donors, and that's how they funded their campaign. And that's really different for women trying to make that ask. It's not necessarily a kitchen table thing to be like, can I have some money? Can I have some money? And so it's really hard, or women find it hard to make that ask and do that. So I think there are a lot of things that are a grind for local years, but I think also a lot of what Dr. Palmer was saying, it's really where they see impact. And I've seen a lot of our, like I was saying earlier, so many of our candidates follow that impact and are moving from a state house to a city council or those races. And so they really are focused on that local level and are willing to sort of grind that out.
Yeah, I think that we can't overlook the impact of term limits in the state house, right? And so that's going to have a weird effect on this idea of a pipeline and a political career as well. And so, what I'm noticing in my very preliminary research is, women who served in the state house get termed out, and then they go back to their districts and serve on city councils, county councils. And so just, again, that institutional feature is going to have some unintended consequences. But I think here's the other thing about local races. Running for local races, it's a slog, and the fundraising piece of it is really difficult. But here's the thing. What I didn't present in my table today was, because I didn't have data from 2024, here in Ohio, we elect over 15,000 people to elected office.
There's so many.
Every inch of Ohio is incorporated, which is not normal. Okay, which means every inch of Ohio has multiple political representatives. So the research that I've been able to do at the city, township, and village level shows that most of these races are not competitive.
Yes.
It's the same people running over and over and over and over and over again, and they're running unopposed. So there are opportunities out there. And especially at the township level, where women have the lowest representation. If I'm remembering correctly, the research that we did a couple years ago, women are 5% of township trustees. So these are the ruralist parts of Ohio. There's township trustees, it's a 3-member board, and only 5% of them are women. And so as you would assume, it's in the villages and city councils where you see significantly more women. The weirdest thing is it's villages that have the highest proportion. I assumed it would be cities because you tend to find more women in urban areas running for public office, but it's actually villages, and it's a significant difference. So that's another weird thing about Ohio that I can't figure out. But there are opportunities out there, and I'm not saying that they're easy by any means, because you've got the stereotypical township trustee who's been there for 20 years and is basically running the show. How do you knock that person out? That's not an easy thing to do, but there are opportunities because these elections, they're not competitive. And I'm sure in some places they are scrambling to try to find people to fill these positions. And so that's another way you can get in, as you talked about before, is get yourself appointed.
Get appointed, yes. Monica Wilson was appointed here in Parma.
And so that is an opportunity that, you got to be ready when it happens, and then you're in.
100%. I think that there are so many places, again, to put your energy, and I think that I've seen so many folks lately spinning and feeling like there's nowhere to plug in. There are a million, how many?
15,000.
15,000 places to plug in. So there is somewhere that you might be asking someone, hey, you should run. It might be you that should run. So just think about it. And I'll ask you 4 more times.
Okay, we have several requests for really specific data, and I guess maybe the question is, do you have this data? Where can people find it? And where are the reliable sources for data? So people have asked, for example, what percentage of county commissioners are women? What about city councils, mayors, and school board?
Yeah, it's really hard to collect because it's 15,000 races. But if you go, so I can refer you to 2 places. There's the Center for Women in Politics at Baldwin Wallace, Center for Women in Politics of Ohio at Baldwin Wallace, and I've got tons of data there for you. There's 2 websites, and so we've got our most recent data on one website and our more historical stuff on another. If you want fabulous data, going back, sort of the mothership is the COP at Rutgers, Center for American Women in Politics at Rutgers. Like, we all worship them and want to be them. And so they have incredible data on women in Congress, but also at the state legislative level, going back decades and decades. And it's phenomenal, and it's just a fun website to muck around in because they've got just so much information, fantastic data, and so those are the 2 places that I use.
Okay, and a subset on the data question is, how are you helping women run in inner cities?
That's me.
Yeah.
So when it comes to I think at the Matriots, one thing that we're thinking more and more about every year is really thinking about what are the different intersections and needs of our different candidates. We know that every region in Ohio operates really, really differently. The different demographics, things operate really differently. The different cities, are very different. Even just from who has a mayor, what does that race look like? I mean, everything is so different, and so. Sorry.
I moved the card.
Oh yeah, see, I'm looking,
Inner cities.
But I got to reference my question. But yeah, so I think that one of the things is thinking about what are the specific needs, and so even through our, this year we're having a speaker series throughout the state where we're, going around and really thinking about what are the barriers to women running for office, and so at that event we're thinking about what are the different intersectionalities, and so we might be thinking about, finance and what does that look like. We might be thinking about what are the barriers barriers for LGBTQ candidates, Black women? What are the barriers for folks in rural Ohio versus, the cities? What does it look like to be running, right outside of a big city, and where the attention is being sucked into Hamilton County, and you're right outside of that, or right, what does that look like? And all these little nuanced differences, from what childcare do you need, those different things. So I think that those are a lot of the ways that we're trying to, not just in inner cities, but just trying to think very thoughtfully about what are the specific barriers and needs for women to run for office in these different areas, because it's different, and we have to be thoughtful. If we want women to run, we have to be thoughtful about what is actually going to encourage them. And again, not just saying, I think you're the right person for the job, but what is actually the foundation that's gonna be under them, that's gonna help them rise to that position is something we think deeply about at the Matriots.
Okay, as a foundational training question, what kinds of educational programs do the Matriots offer for candidates? And Dr. Palmer, when it's your turn, maybe you could comment on how to challenge an incumbent.
Oh.
Yeah, so one, I think that there are so many incredible organizations across Ohio that really dig into training candidates, that really think about the really tactical, how to give your stump speech, how to budget, how to find your vote number. That's not necessarily where the Matriots live in specific candidate training. When we're doing our education programming, it really is more centered around the education that will encourage you to get you to run. So I think that we're not necessarily focused on those trainings, but our education events really are not just for our candidates, but really are for our community to really understand how they can support the candidates that we're endorsing. How do you leverage your participation to help get these women elected? That's a key piece of our education work from a community perspective. And then when it comes to our candidates, where it's a lot of, again, not necessarily training, but the bringing together communing with our candidates, having events where they're able to commune with each other, able to commune with our members, able to promote their platform. And then I think that one of the biggest things that the Matriots offers is just a place where to ask a question. Our candidates are reach out to us and say, I can't really figure this out, or I'm thinking about this, or this is maybe my next step, and we think deeply about how we can connect folks to the resource that will hopefully help them get them to the next step. So definitely we are often a bridge, I think, between a lot of different partners around the state as well.
Yeah, and I'm going to give a plug for another organization that's near and dear to my heart that does political training, and that's Running Start. Running Start's awesome. So I lived in Washington, D.C. for 10 years before I moved out to Ohio, and I was one of the original founders of an organization called Women Under 40 PAC, and so we were a bipartisan PAC that funded women who under the age of 40 who were running for Congress. And then in 2006, there weren't any. And so we realized we are coming at this from the wrong end of the problem. So we launched a nonprofit organization called Running Start, and the flagship program trains high school girls to run for public office. So it's not general leadership training, this is how you run for public office. And so we launched that program, I believe, in 2008. And we are now just seeing so many of the students and young women who participate in that program are running for city council, for state legislature, for Congress, and it's really remarkable. But it's hands-on training for young girls, who are in high school from all over the country, and we also have programs for women in college and for women who have just graduated from college. So it's runningstart.org. So if you know of a young woman in high school who has that leadership spark in them, or not, recommend that program to them. How do you challenge an incumbent? Wait for them to die? It used to be that a good sex scandal would shake things up, but I don't even know if people care about that anymore. Well, I mean, the bottom line is campaign fundamentals are pretty much campaign fundamentals no matter who you're running against. So I think I was a political consultant and campaign manager in a previous life. And when I lived in DC, I learned from the best. ideally, I mean, what tends to happen with incumbents, not all, but with a lot of them, is they take it for granted. They just assume they're going to win. They have a huge pile of money, which they don't even bother spending, but they have a huge pile of money, you know, they've got great name recognition, but they start to take it for granted. And that's something voters care about. The minute voters sniff out that you think you have it in the bag and you don't need to listen to them, you're done. You're out. And so it's being able to, you know, pay attention. Like, is that happening? And figuring out what do people in that district care about? Because if you're not talking about what people care about, you're not going to win. The end. Okay. And so I would say, no, it's the same kind of campaign fundamentals, but challengers do have serious challenges. I think it's still the policy in a lot of local media that they won't even name the challenger until after the primary. And so you're already starting behind because you're not as well known as the incumbent. I mean, you've got all these other challenges that you have to deal with. And obviously challengers have big problems raising money compared to incumbents. But the campaign fundamentals are the same. You have to talk about what people care about, and that's going to be different depending on the election cycle. But if you can point out to the fact that, oh, the incumbents missed votes, the incumbent hasn't proposed a piece of legislation in 20 years, you know, all of those kinds of things that show what they're not doing for the district that they're supposed to be doing, that's where you want to hit them hard.
Yeah.
Okay, crystal ball time.
Oh, no.
How do you expect the current reversal on DEI will affect women running for office?
Oh, gosh.
Wow, I haven't even thought that far ahead. I'm mostly just trying to save my own ass.
I think that, and I'll speak, you know, operating from an organization that, you know, really focuses on the state and local level, and doesn't endorse on federal, and doesn't really, you know, that's not where our work is. But what we always feel is the climate, right, from the federal government. That the climate, and we felt it last year. It was really tough for us at the Matriots when folks were so overwhelmed with, you know, Congress and in the federal, in the presidential race, that it was really, really hard. Hey, we're down here too. Like, there's really great candidates in your county and in your state legislature doing awesome things. And so, trying to get people's attention back was really, really, really tough. And so, I do think that's where I think, and I don't even necessarily predict that women are going to be super discouraged to run for office because of what's going on, but I do think it's just something that I'm aware of, because the feeling of folks just feeling isolated in this, feeling like there's no reason I should run. I was I was just at giving a talk at a university and at Muskingum, and I asked the students, just give me one word to describe how you're feeling right now about the political climate, and to hear confused, isolated, frustrated, scared from these college students was really tough. But I think that it's just important that we are calling it out, that climate, and so that we can combat it, because it is there, it's weighing on us all. But so that's what I think I kind of fear in terms of getting women to run for office, but I'm hopeful because I think we're aware of it, and I see so much energy. People are ready to get in the game, and they're just looking for a place to put their energy. So come to the Matriots. We have a place to put your energy. But seriously, I think folks are really ready to fight for their communities and to put their energy somewhere. So I think if we can just call it out, put our feelings on the table, and then say, what are we actually going to do? We'll be all right. We're going to be okay. People are going to be motivated to run, and we'll get there. We just have to keep plugging away and keep being honest with ourselves and keep doing what we're doing in this room today, which is having the conversation. So,
What they said.
Okay, thanks. Kind of a related question. How would you convince a woman candidate to block out the fear of running for something like governor or president and appeal to male voters and knock down that bias?
Y'all should have told us what y'all was, the questions y'all gonna be coming. Yeah. Man, oh my God, you got us up there. Okay, can you read it again? Honestly, yeah. I want to hear it again. Seriously, I have to think about it. Seriously.
You mentioned that it's more difficult for a woman to overcome gender bias when we're talking about a CEO position, either the governor or the president. How would you encourage a woman candidate to knock down that bias? What training might you offer? What encouragement? What research? Whatever.
I think from an encouragement perspective, the first thing I'll say is that we have to connect the dots on why women are qualified to do the work that they're doing. I feel often that our women candidates, they're like checking all the boxes. Do I have this qualification? Do I have this, before they'll even make a move to run for office? And I think that connecting the dot, just of really being thoughtful of what skill set do you have and how can it be an asset to the office, these executive positions, we really have to have that conversation and talk about it, because I think it's no different than, seeing is believing, right? You just need to be able to hear, understand, connect the dots on why you will be actually be impactful, because I think because women are truly thinking deeply about where they'll have the most impact, if you don't think you can have impact there, you're not going, no matter how shiny the office looks. I think a lot of our women are, if it's not where they can really affect their communities, that is not necessarily where they're thinking about. If they feel like it's a place where the issues are not actually being handled, then it's not a place that they might not be thinking about it. So I think, one, understanding what impact you actually can have there, but then getting the other folks around them. You need, when the governor, you need the state legislature to be able to back up, that governor when she is in office, so that she then has that impact to want to continue to stay in that position. And actually, so I think it's all those pieces. It's not just, we want to get you to run for office, but then we have to have the other pieces in place so that you can actually have that impact that women are trying to have when they're elected.
Yeah, and I think sort of building off of that is, it's relatively, I think, simple, but can be really profound, and that's just reframe it. Mm-hmm. It's not about you. Mm-hmm. It's about helping your state. That seems to appeal to women at a very deep level. And so, interviews with candidates show that they're very intimidated about, like, I can't ask people for money for me. It's like, no, you're not asking for you. And so when you make that phone call and you make that $5,000 ask, it's like, can you give me $5,000 to help our community, blah, blah, blah. Or can you give me $5,000 to help my campaign? Yep. And so if you shift the focus a lot of times, and it's like it's not about you, and women get that. Mm-hmm. Like, they understand. It's like, no, you want to help your state. Yeah. This is about helping your state or the nation or whatever. And so it can be something as small as that. There's also a fabulous website called She Should Run, where you can send a little note to anybody encouraging them to run. And it's really cool. And so, it's just like, keep hammering that home. But again, I think it's just that simple reframing, and just keep reminding people it's not about you, it's about your community.
Okay, 2 more quick questions. Well, the first one will be quick. Are the Matriots supporting Amy Acton for governor?
I don't know, because it's not this year. We're focused on local elections. We certainly hope that she would apply for our endorsement, but we run all of our candidates through the same questions. We do our background research on all of our candidates. All of our candidates reapply each year, because we want to make sure that they are carrying out carrying out our values in office while they're there. So we check back in every time they are running for office. So we'll see what Dr. Acton does.
Well, since Amy Acton came up, I was thinking earlier about when you were talking about, the pretty scary social media environment that a lot of women candidates face. And I think about what she went through during COVID, and, someone leaked her home address, and she had people sitting outside her front lawn, like, threatening her children. And so I would love at some point be able to talk to her and ask her, like, how did you deal with that, and what made you overcome that? Relating back to the previous question about how do you convince women to kind of get over that hurdle. Clearly she had to get over that hurdle, and I would love to find out from her, okay, what finally pushed you to make that decision? Absolutely. Because clearly that is something she had to think very deeply about.
Yeah, if she applies for our endorsement, that'll be my first question.
Yeah.
Why are you doing this?
Yeah.
Okay, we've consolidated a lot of questions up here. We are just about out of time. So it is my role to close us out by telling you that the videotape of today's program will be posted on YouTube. If you go on YouTube and search for the League of Women Voters content, you will find it. If you are not a League member, please consider joining us. You will be more informed about political issues in Ohio and in your community, and you will be offered many ways to get involved and make a difference. I'll remind you that Dr. Palmer's book is available at a discount if you pick up the cards on the front table in the hall there and order online. And finally, thank you very, very much to both of our speakers, Fizz White and Barbara Palmer.